Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, Jay GABRANI. I met Jay recently at New Media Summit in San Diego, which was put on by Steve Olsher. And it was funny because I was just telling Jay how I noticed him, and I'd see him around the room and go, oh, there's that finance guy, there's that prepared father guy. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to invite him to have a conversation with me today. So let me tell you a little bit about Jay. After his first child was born in 2005, Jay jumped into the world of real estate investing. Despite several challenges along the way, he built a multi-seven-figure real estate portfolio. That portfolio helped him take a multi-year sabbatical to deal with the heartbreaking personal tragedy when his wife passed away in 2014. This experience led Jay to reevaluate the purpose of his life while taking a multi-year sabbatical. Before his wife passed away, Jay thought he was financially prepared. After going through the experience of being the executor of his wife's estate, he realized he wasn't. Today, Jay makes an impact raising his 3 children and empowering fathers to secure their family's financial future as the founder of Prepared Fathers. He achieves this through one-on-one and group coaching programs and his daily podcast, A Minute with Jay. He is a frequent podcast guest and does a limited number of speaking engagements. And of course, you can find out more about Jay at his website, jgrabani.com. So first, I want to ask a question about 1 minute with Jay, because most podcasts, of course, are longer than a minute. And so that in itself is very intriguing to me. So tell me a little bit about that, and then we'll have our other conversation.
Sure. Fantastic. Well, great to be with you, Tammy. Thank you for that intro. A Minute with Jay, it's very simple. I also realized there are a lot of podcasts out there, and they're very skilled people who are interviewing. I, for whatever the reason, I just seem to be much better answering questions than asking them. So I did want to do a podcast. So what I did was I focused on 1 minute episodes, and it's usually just a quote, an inspirational or a mindset quote. And I put maybe a little bit of my own experience behind that quote, and that's the end of the episode. So it's very quick. It's very simple. It helps with download numbers because people tend to download them a lot. And it's just something different. It's a 1 minute episode.
Oh, I like that. That's similar to my daily success word of the day. When I first got started, I said, okay, I'm going to talk to someone about one word and what that person's definition is of that word. And our conversations, of course, went on for longer than a minute.
Sure.
But I really like that concept. And what you just said makes all the sense in the world. Because it's 1 minute, people can download it, listen to it, and it's like inspiration.
That's it.
Okay. So you obviously have been a very successful real estate investor, and then life took a turn for you, and you discovered that even though you thought you were really financially prepared, I guess you found out you weren't. So tell me more about that.
Sure. So I'll give you a little bit of a background. So got married 2004 and then 3 kids pretty quickly, 2005, 2007, 2009. So my wife and I, obviously very, very busy. We had kind of a traditional household. I was more the outwardly focused spouse, economics, business, bringing home money, etc. And she was super busy taking care of 3 young children and the household. Now, we were building a real estate portfolio together. I've been in business my entire adult life. So back in 2011, she had a slip and fall, little accident. And she went to the doctor. She wrenched her back. She went to the doctor the next day, and he prescribed her painkillers called Oxycontin. So now, Tammy, I mean, like, I get into this and I talk to audiences because I really believe in genuineness. Everyone goes through tough things. So I share this story. So hopefully it helps someone out there. She became addicted to those painkillers. Throw in, obviously, the young children, the really busy lifestyle. She also suffered from depression. Basically, we went on a very, very tough 3-year run from 2011 to 2014, where her addiction was getting worse, her depression was getting worse. And she made a decision back then in 2014 she basically decided that she didn't want to be here anymore. And she took her own life. So obviously, to have something like that happen in your life, much less with your spouse, it's very, very, very shocking. It's obviously very overwhelming. But because of the real estate portfolio that her and I had built together, I was able to take the next 4 years off just because, like I said, she was responsible for all the kids' things. I needed to now obviously step up and handle all of that stuff. So the business I was running at the time, it was a marketing agency. I shut it down. I phoned all my clients and just said, sorry, can't do it anymore. And I just focused inward, obviously to deal with my own mourning, but obviously really to help my children because they were 5, 7, and 9 when she passed away. So the whole thing about being prepared, I want the audience to realize that preparedness is not just about having a certain amount of money in order to handle these types of life's curveballs. It is about do you have the proper paperwork set up? Have you had the right conversations with people like an executor of your estate or a lawyer? That's where I meant where, yeah, I thought I was prepared because I had built a portfolio which had money in it. But I went through the experience of being the executor of her estate. And let's just say that I'm trained, by the way, as an accountant. I went to university for accounting. So I'm trained as an accountant. I've been a lifelong entrepreneur, and I've been a real estate investor since 2005. So you would think that paperwork and files and all this stuff, numbers, I'd be able to handle it with my background. I found it very difficult. So I went and talked to a lot of other fathers and parents and just said, like, what would happen if you went through an experience like this? And Tammy, the answers I got back were just not good. Like, most fathers were just nowhere near prepared. Some of them didn't have a will. Some of them just didn't have any concept of it, even though they were responsible for their family finance. So that is where Prepared Fathers was born. I realized that had to change. There's so many fathers out there who just kind of, for lack of a better term, inherit the responsibility of finance. And they were never trained on it. Plain and simple. Unless they received a formal education in finance or commerce or something, most other fathers were never trained. They're brilliant guys doing all kinds of things, but they don't know this stuff. So that's where Prepared Fathers was born. I want to change that. And I want to help fathers secure their family's financial future by empowering them. So that's kind of the longer answer to what you asked, but I wanted to make sure your audience had context.
Well, I again, just like what you said, even though you were a business person, who is ever really prepared to deal with something when they're dealing with the emotional aspects of losing someone in their life and of course, taking care of 3 children at those young, very vulnerable ages. And you said something really important. You said that some of the answers you got back were not good. One of them was many people do not have wills. How important is it to have a will?
If there's a more stressed word than vital, I don't know what it is. But if you have 2 things, if you have children and if you have assets of any sort, assets could be a house, a stock portfolio, a pension plan, etc., you must have a will. Simply because if something happens, here's one of the 2 things that's going to happen if you don't have a will. A, the government may take a much higher share of what's called like probate taxes or estate taxes, whatever it's called in your jurisdiction, because your wishes are not outlined. So they may apply some of their own rules, and that usually results in much higher taxes being paid. And even if there's not a higher number, for sure, it will take your family longer to recover control of those assets the ability to sell those assets to raise money, etc. The government will tie those up until they have settled the estate. So if you don't have a will, but you have children and assets, that is just a very dangerous game you're playing. And again, we don't like to think about these things because if our family is utilizing a will, then obviously something has happened to us. So a lot of people, not just fathers, a lot of people just kind of shun the subject. But I will encourage the audience at a very, very minimum, if you do not have a will, there's lots of sources you can go online. If you have a little bit bigger budget, you can go see a lawyer directly. A wills and estates lawyer, not just a general lawyer. A wills and estates lawyer. I'm sure there's lots of them in your local area. Please reach out and get that process started because you said it, the time to deal with the stressful situation is not when you're in the middle of it. Okay, so if something happens or something happens to you, then afterwards, your family's going to be going through a very difficult time. There's no reason to layer that level of stress on top of them as well. So please, a will, it's vital. I don't know what's more important than vital, but it's vital.
Vital. So what is the biggest mistake most fathers are making today related to, everybody thinks that they're a good dad if they're able to go to the kids' ball game or to the play. But what are the big mistakes people are making today?
Okay. So basically, Tammy, like when it comes to these different areas of fatherhood, I talk about finances, financial empowerment. So yes, maybe you take your kids to their ball games, maybe you coach, maybe you're great in your community and you're charitable, etc. But my whole thing is that the one thing that we all have in common, we may not have those things in common, but the one thing we do have in common is everyone needs money. We live in a first world country. Everyone needs it. It's kind of right below oxygen on the list. So I think it's really important. And it might even be outside of physically kind of protecting our children and our family and loving them. Probably the single most important thing we could do is be really strong financially. That means like make good money, build wealth, organize ourselves really well, etc. These type of things. So it's common to every father. So the number one mistake they make is very simple. It's that they don't really pay that type of thing a lot of attention, right? They're busy with all kinds of other things. Maybe it's coaching their kids' team. Maybe it's charitable. Maybe it's just relaxing and playing video games. I don't know. Everyone has their own thing, Netflix and chill. But it's the thing of if you can at least get that step taken care of, then that's really, really good. It's good for your family. And you have the right conversations. You get those things taken care of, paperwork. You have the right conversations with your spouse, with your lawyer, etc. And you have a plan to build your assets. That is what a prepared father does, as opposed to kind of putting it away or not thinking about it or just putting it to the back burner and never getting around to it. So that's the number one mistake most fathers. And again, my business is called Prepared Fathers, but I do recognize there's lots of mothers listening here as well and watching. So this applies to everyone. This applies to all parents, right? So it's very important.
Yes, and it's interesting because everything you're saying does apply to any person out there who is responsible. And when it comes to children, anyone who's ever been a parent or a grandparent or has children in their life, you just know how important it is to be, number one, a strong role model or to be solid and because they're looking to you so that they know what to do in the future. And one thing I've noticed is our world is so different. It just seems to change. So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about children and teaching children, because again, like you said, hey, I thought I was prepared. Mm-hmm. What are like 3 things, money skills that you could be teaching your children that could really help them when they, become older and want to get out on their own?
Great question. And I just want to tie back to what you said there. One of the most hidden benefits, but probably one of the most valuable benefits, is that whole role model positioning. If you got your financial stuff together, that's great. But when you can teach your children, then now we're affecting generations. Now it's really valuable. So thanks for bringing that point up. So the skills that I teach my children are, first of all, I have a saying with them: skills pay the bills. All right. So I want them to have that in their head, that it's great to have all kinds of skills, but I try and teach them to develop the more valuable skills that they can in return receive payment for their services or employment, etc. So those skills are as follows. Two are to kind of make the money, and the third one is what to do with the money when they have it. So the first skill is the skill of kind of business development. I've encouraged all my children, even though they're still young, to do business in some shape or fashion. So example, lemonade stands, dog walking, eBay. They take old items, put them on eBay or Kijiji, that type of thing. So things that they can start off with small, garage sales, going to garage sales, picking up something small, selling it. So I want them to get into the habit of not relying on other folks, per se, an employer. I want them to always have the skill of, if they need to make money on their own, that they have skills. So that business development / kind of marketing skill, that's really important. That's one. Number two, Tammy, and this even, I know that the artist audience, etc., they may not like this one too much, but it is truly valuable. It's sales skills. It is ultimately, I think that whether you're looking to work for someone, whether you are doing something on your own, we're always kind of selling something, whether even if it's just an interview or something like that doesn't need money, it doesn't matter. We're still selling, and we want to be able to show people the value we can bring. That's what I mean by selling. I don't mean jamming something down someone's throat. It's you have to be able to communicate clearly what value you bring to the audience, and in return, the audience will reward you with, maybe it's subscribing to your letter, maybe it's buying a product, etc. So that's the second skill, is sales skills. So those first two, business development / marketing, and the second one is sales. Those will help them make money. And this, by the way, I want parents to realize this is regardless of whatever passions they have, etc. Like my daughter loves horse riding. She could develop something around horse riding. My son loves video games. So he can develop something around video. So I want people to realize no matter what their passion are, those two skill sets are super important. And the third one, once you have some money built up, is investing. So my children have watched pretty well since day one. Our real estate portfolio, I talk to them about stocks. I talk to them about the money that, by the way, every dollar they make, 50% of it goes to their savings, future self, I call it. People call it pay yourself first. I like the term, this money is for your future self, right? I tell them when you're 35, 40, 50 years old, you might need this money. And the fact you started saving it like when you were under 10, it gives a chance for it to grow and compound. So I wanted to just mention that. Third one is investing. So they know that as they're building up their money, they are learning about different asset classes in a very simplistic way, right? Not in a detailed way yet, but they understand what a share is. They know that that's ownership of a company. They understand real estate, because most of our portfolio, by the way, is within a 5-minute drive of our house. So every day I pick them up from school, we drive by properties, right? And I'm always talking to them about it. So I think that every parent it's a great thing to pass on to your children, that those skills, because I want them to be independent, right? Because who knows what the job market, et cetera, is going to look like in the next 10, 15 years. You hear things about AI, self-driving this, like all this technology that might replace jobs. But I think that if they have those skills and they have the skill set, they can apply that to anything. So those are the skills that I teach my children.
It's interesting as you were talking about that, I'm thinking to myself, those are also skills that adults need.
Oh, yes. yes.
How cool would it be if in elementary school, children were actually taught these business and marketing skills, that selling is good because we're not only selling products, but we're always selling ourselves, and that, okay, let's take the money and invest it for our future self. And think about if we did that, like from, like you said, age 9 or 10, yep. By the time we're 20, we would be ready for the world, instead of putting all that time and energy into, like you said, let's say video games or doing all these sports and things, even if they just spend a little bit of time learning all of those skills, like you said, and I'm just thinking, wow. I mean, I look back at, my life. From a young age, I knew how to write. And of course, carried that through my entire life. But again, I never received any financial guidance other than you can budget your money, and the big plan was go work for someone else.
Right.
And I think it's important that people do start thinking about, what can I do to create something where I can make money when I want to make it, doing what I want to do, rather than relying on someone, especially in today's world where employers, it's like, hire you, fire you, like on a whim, depending on, which direction the wind is blowing. That's and correct. Of course, real estate, I've dabbled in real estate myself. When, I had a house, sold it, or I actually bought another house, rented out the one that type of thing.
Excellent.
But again, if we could encourage our children to, to think in that more entrepreneurial way, and thinking about investments, they would just have a much better start in life than always being coddled and thinking that everything should be handed to them. So you said that you basically are just coming out of this sabbatical, a period of 4 years where your life, I imagine, really changed.
Yes.
What were some of the big lessons that you came out of that 4-year period that you could share?
Yes. Okay. That's a great question. The first one I want to talk about is something I call mountains versus molehills. Okay. When I started my real estate investing career, it was in 2007. It was right at the beginning of the credit crisis. I bombed. Like, the first 3 properties I bought went down immediately in value. And I'm going to use the term, I was devastated back then, because within 6 months I had lost a bunch of money on the price of the house. They were running negative cash flow. It was very stressful, etc. Now, years and years and years later, after having gone through the death of my wife, I now realize that back then, that was actually just kind of a molehill. I made it into a mountain back then, because up until that point, that was the biggest thing that had happened to me in life that was kind of negative. But then when I lost my wife, there's a mountain. Like, that was a mountain. So I encourage people, especially people, if you find yourself kind of getting upset at some of the smallest things, maybe on social media, someone posts something and that kind of triggers you, I'll ask you to kind of classify it between mountain and molehill. Is it really a big deal? Or is it more just something that got your goose and you kind of just had to react? So that's number one. Number two, much more it ties into number one, but it was something I read in a book it was like, learn, don't blame. And this is the gist of that, is that every time you blame something or someone for some circumstance that you personally are in, maybe you blame your family, you blame the government, you blame your spouse, whatever, you blame people for different things that you find yourself in. This was stunning to me when I read it. You actually are just giving those things and people power over you. And instead of blaming people, you should just sit back and learn from the situation. Ask yourself, okay, what happened here? What would I change? Right? How can it be different? And go through that thought process instead of being angry and reacting and blaming. Because quite frankly, you can blame. In today's world, no one really cares. I mean, like, everyone's busy doing their own thing. So they don't really care. And then you just kind of get looked upon as a complainer and someone negative. So I would really ask you that you kind of look after those type of things. Learn, don't blame. And the third one was about self-care. I did mention, right, 3 young children at home back in 2010, 11, like hustle bustle all the time. You maybe don't work out as much. Maybe you don't eat as healthy. But then at the end of the day, I am a believer that we have one life. Let's make it really, really, really good. And the best way to make it good is to look after your physical health as well and your financial health. But your physical health, you realize if you don't have physical health, then it's going to be pretty tough. So I got a lot of that advice was just, Jay, be good to yourself during sabbatical. Like, be good to yourself, take care of yourself, right? Spend time on yourself, with yourself, by yourself. And I did all of those things. So those are the three things that as I went through the sabbatical, I really kind of uncovered. It took a while, right? You read a lot during sabbatical. I was listening to a lot of podcasts, etc., because I wasn't doing any business. I wasn't doing anything. I was literally picking my children up and dropping them off from school. And I was just spending time with them. That was it, right? So those are lessons. And I think that those lessons are applicable to everybody.
I agree. And again, in a way, you were really fortunate because you did have that money that allowed you to do that, because sometimes something like that could happen to someone and they don't have that money where they would have to continue going to work and taking care of the kids and doing all those different things. So it's good that you're able to share this lessons learned so that people could become prepared. And I think that is what makes your message so compelling is that, you're saying, okay, this happened, here I am, this is what I learned, and sharing it with other people so that they can become prepared. And like you said, you focus on fathers because you're coming from that perspective as a father. But everything you're saying is absolutely applicable to any person who's out there, trying to be a good person, and especially if you're working with children. So if somebody wants to connect with you and find out more, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I mean, like, the website is www.preparedfathers.com. But basically, because I knew the audience is, it includes men and women on your show, I wanted to just, I have a little checklist free for everybody. It is kind of, the title of the checklist, by the way, is How Fathers Can Manage Their Finances on Their Smartphone, right? But of course, it is applicable to everyone. So I'm just going to give the little link. I'd love for your audience to just go there, download it. It is www.preparedfathers.com/Tammy, TAMI. That way, everyone in your audience, man or woman, can go there, because everyone pretty well has a smartphone and everyone needs to manage some finances. I find that people get a little bit, that was one of the reasons you asked what the number one mistake was. It's not paying attention. One of the other mistakes is just having your stuff all over the place, paperwork, etc. So I try and teach you in that checklist how to get everything using your phone so that it's in one place, so it's easily found and accessed when you need it. So please go to that site, www.preparedfathers.com/Tammy, TAMI.
Preparedfathers.com/TAMI.
That's it.
And that's really cool. And I love that concept, because most people, if they have their financial information on their phone, that also means that it's probably backed up to a cloud somewhere because of how the phones work with that. So that's really a cool gift. And thank you so much, because I know that I'm going to go get that checklist, because I need to I'm thinking about where is all this stuff? And you're absolutely right. Most of us, we don't have everything prepared that we should. Yes. And especially if you do have any assets of any kind or children, you really do have to stop. And that goes for, it doesn't matter how old you are, you need to start early with all of this, because we just live in this really complicated world. So, Jay, before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to add to our conversation?
Yes, I want to stress to everyone the importance of this stuff once again. Even if you yourself have some resistance to it, the way I've found that some parents actually kind of maybe wake up or snap out of it is when I say, your children are worth it. Plain and simple, right? Your children are worth it. Why would you want to, we love them, we take care of them, we feed them, we clothe them. Why would you not handle this layer on top, right? And it's not going to happen overnight, but if you just take the simple steps, you too can be a prepared father or a prepared parent. And again, your children are worth it. That's what I want people to really recognize. So that way you can get over any resistance you may have because you're doing it for them.
Well, you're absolutely on target with that our children are worth it. If that's the only message you get out of our entire conversation, that's important. Preparedfathers.com. Go get that free gift at preparedfathers.com/TAMI, Tammy. And of course, I'll put the hot link in for that because everybody needs their finances in the palm of their hand on their smartphones. So, Jay, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you took with me today.
I enjoyed it very much, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.